We have fresh new January ADP, so it's time to highlight some undervalued players compared to more premium players despite similar age, situations, and production. Being able to trade down within tiers at positions while still maintaining production is by far the easiest way to add draft capital or more assets in general to your roster, and that will be the point of this series throughout the entire offseason. So the way this is going to work is I'm going to show you guys stats from two similar players, but one is valued at a premium in either startups or trades, and the other is valued as the more generic version, we'll say, and then we'll break it down. So first up, we have a wide receiver comparison, and our premium receiver is currently 24 years old, and over his last 17 games, he has produced 117 targets, 75 receptions, 1,350 yards, 8 receiving touchdowns, 15.3 fantasy points per game, and has accumulated 7 top 24 weeks, 6 of which were top 12. And then our generic receiver is also 24 years old, and over his last 17 games, he has produced 136 targets, 95 receptions, 1,200 yards, 7 touchdowns, 15.1 fantasy points per game, and has accumulated 11 top 24 weeks, 4 of which were top 12. And to further feed the comparison, both wide receivers are the wide receiver 2s on their own teams after they traded for an elite wide receiver last spring. And not only were they the first round picks in the same draft class, but they also got drafted out of the exact same college. Now that last one probably gave it away, but if you haven't guessed it yet, our premium player is Jalen Waddle, currently valued as the wide receiver 5 in January ADP as the 106 overall in one quarterback startups, and the generic receiver is Devonta Smith, currently valued as the wide receiver 14 at the 2-3 turn of one quarterback startups. So why the discrepancy here? To me, this one boils down between the difference in their production in their rookie years, as Waddle had a huge season in 2021 with over 100 receptions, over 1,000 yards on 140 targets. He was the next best rookie wide receiver behind Jamar Chase, and that really got people's attention last year. But it's not like Smith had a horrible rookie season though, as he had over 900 receiving yards on almost 40 fewer targets and 40 fewer receptions and 1 fewer touchdown than Jalen Waddle. He succeeded much more as a deep threat in the Eagles offense than Waddle did in the Dolphins offense, despite Waddle being seen as more of the vertical guy of the two coming out of college. But because of those rookie seasons, so then when AJ Brown gets traded to Philly and Tyreek Hill gets traded to Miami, we are less concerned about Waddle's role because he already had 140 targets. So we were more confident that he wouldn't get pushed aside so easily like we thought Smith might be with AJ Brown now in the mix. Now that difference, I think, is still a driving factor in the ADP difference between the two now, because either people don't know that they produced almost identical seasons this year in almost identical situations, or we think that Smith's was more fluky this year and less producible than Jalen Waddle. So again, because our prior beliefs are that Waddle is more established in his offense. But we shouldn't be thinking like that at all, which is why you should be taking advantage of the price difference and selling Waddle for Devonta Smith plus. Our trade analyzer believes that you should be able to get Smith plus a mid to late first for Waddle right now in both one quarterback and superflex leagues. And actually in our trade finder, there's a trade from the beginning of December that essentially boils down to Waddle for Devonta Smith and the 111. If you're a team that doesn't have any firsts, or you're looking to add maybe another first in this 2023 class, this right here is perhaps the best way to do that right now. So next up, we have our running back comparison, and our premium running back just turned 24 a couple weeks ago back in January, and over his last 17 games, he has averaged per game 6.6 rush attempts, 35.5 rushing yards, 4.8 targets, 3.4 receptions, 24.8 receiving yards, 0.6 total touchdowns, 12.7 points per game, and has accumulated 9 top 24 weeks, 4 of which were top 12. And our generic running back is also 24 years old, turning 25 this summer, and over his last 17 games on a per game basis, he has averaged 10.4 rush attempts, 42.4 rushing yards, 3.8 targets, 2.9 receptions, 22.8 receiving yards, 0.4 total touchdowns, and 11.9 fantasy points per game, and he's accumulated 9 top 24 weeks, 3 of which were top 12. And again, to further feed the comparison, both running backs were second-round picks in the same draft class. They are both players that we would like to be 3-down workhorses, but they haven't yet, either due to injury, coaching staff, or both potentially. And then both players were largely overshadowed this year by their complement running back between the tackles bruising RB2 in their respective committees. So if you haven't guessed it yet, our premium player is DeAndre Swift, currently valued as the RB8 in January ADP in the late second round of one quarterback startups. The generic player is Antonio Gibson, all the way down at RB38 outside the top 115 players overall in one quarterback startups. So why the discrepancy here? To be honest, I was super surprised at both players' ADPs. Based on our comment section on here, how people talk about Swift in general, it just seems like people really hate him, and I would have thought that he would have been a mid RB2 in startups, not a top 10 dynasty running back. I also didn't expect Antonio Gibson to be weighed down at RB38 behind Kareem Hunt and 2 spots ahead of Alexander Mattison. Like, what are we even doing here? I get the disappointment associated with both players and the fatigue that is starting to build as we enter yet
Another offseason where yet again both players are criminally undervalued based on their numbers on a points per game basis.
I get it. But RB38 for Antonio Gibson, I mean, I still can't believe that that's his value. You're telling me that the community prefers Devin Singletary, Kareem Hunt, Ezekiel Elliott, Khalil Herbert, Isaiah Pacheco, and James Cook all over Antonio Gibson, a player who just a year ago finished as a top 10 fantasy running back? I mean, I get his role has changed. Brian Robinson is a better running back, of course. He's not. And Gibson's just
ain't even the shit no more. Ugh.
I mean, looking at his recent trades in the Trade Finder, it's just really, really sad. Someone traded Antonio Gibson and Juwan Johnson for a single third-round pick. This trade actually looks nice as a second for Antonio Gibson until you look a little deeper, and that second is actually the 212 in that league. We have Gibson for Michael Carter on here, and even a playoff trade that was Gibson and a second and third for Jerick McKinnon. If we go back to our trade analyzer, it's telling us that we can move off of DeAndre Swift for Antonio Gibson plus the 1.08 in Superflex leagues or the 105-106 area in one quarterback leagues. I mean, a mid to late first just by itself is a fantastic way to just get out from under DeAndre Swift in general if you've been looking to do that recently, let alone adding what feels like a throw-in piece in Antonio Gibson, and that's an easy deal to make, again, to either regain or add more draft capital to add to your arsenal this offseason. I'm going to be doing videos like this all offseason, so be sure to subscribe for more content like this. Plus, guys, just want to let you know, if you haven't heard yet, we just dropped our YouTube membership, which gives you even more opportunity to have more Dynasty content from this channel all year long. So click the link below to learn more about that. And if you want to see some more players that you should be buying or selling, I highly recommend checking out this video right up here.